Glass and were very unsuccessful 7 years, maybe 8 years ago now, Google Glass.
Yeah.
And it was kind of just like a laughing nightmare. And I think they were just too early, but they did kind of set the foundation for how it could work. And I think a lot of other companies have been like learning from that. And there are people that still believe that there's no way they're going to put on smart glasses. But the consensus on things like AirPods, even just a few years ago, was these things are never going to work.
Yeah.
They're so ugly. Like, we look like Martians running around.
Yeah, I remember the first person I saw wearing AirPods.
Oh.
I was with another guy. He was like an older dude, and he just goes up to the kid. He goes, "Do you have cigarettes in your ears?" Because literally it was just like a white stick coming out.
We look like R2-D2s running around. And now they are arguably the
they're trendy.
biggest jewelry item of all time.
Yeah.
So glasses, if we can get the aesthetic right, that's will be a part of that wearable thing.
And Instagram, YouTube, everything will be interfacing through this thing. Mm-hmm. And how will I send text messages?
The same way.
So, but to send a text message now, I have two thumbs that type on a virtual keyboard, or I guess on a literal keyboard on glass.
So you could have virtual keyboards. All of that could still exist.
Oh, through the interface. Mm-hmm. So it would pop up at the bottom, and I would go like this, literally.
So instead of this, you're just like more free in your life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, weird.
And then we'll do a lot more interfacing through voice commands and just natural language. So if you've kind of seen the wild evolution in artificial intelligence where AI systems are getting better at understanding natural language, you can imagine these types of systems kind of powering our interfaces. So it's not even as much writing a full email or searching things via text. You're just able to kind of speak and do things.
Interesting. And then how do advertisements work in this AR world? Because I imagine any place where there's people's eyeballs, there's going to be brands. So what happens in that regard?
Yeah. So there's like surveillance, kind of capitalism, and a world where when you're walking down the street and it just looks like Times Square all the time, I don't think is going to work out well for most people. And I hope that that's not what it becomes. But advertisements would be overlaid as well, likely, on top of the physical world, just the way your email would. But there's also a world where AR glasses make less kind of fake synthetic things around us. And here's what I mean by that. If advertisements now just existed in people's augmented reality glasses, it means we don't need billboards anymore. And billboards and kind of digital signage and all sorts of things, that's not natural either. We're kind of just used to it.
Right.
But that's not very aesthetically pleasing either. So we can resort back to more organic kind of natural landscapes, knowing that advertisements would appear over somebody's digital world, would be overlaid on their physical world, as opposed to just this massive billboard. And then there's also we talk a lot about augmented reality, but there's also diminished reality. So you can have AR glasses and say you don't want to see a big garbage can on your way to work. You could actually have it diminish sites that you don't want to see.
Whoa. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
So instead of overlaying just digital things on my world, I could say, I don't like the color green and I don't want to see green things. Or you could say, I don't like this big dumpster that I have to walk by every day, get rid of that. Or the Times Square billboards, and I just want to walk through Times Square and it looked like what it did maybe 150 years ago.
That is wild. That seems like that would bring up some ethical issues as well.
All of it. And I think technology always evolves and challenges ethics, and sometimes for the better. Sometimes it really helps push us and advance ethically in our morals. And then, of course, it also comes with a lot of red flags and gray flags. And we also might not want this. Like, that's why I like to bring these conversations to light and to the public, because we might, if this isn't something that we want to do, let's just not do it. And let's not have 6 people kind of direct the future.
Right. So are you able to diminish sites? Would there be a limit on what you'd be allowed to diminish? So like, I mean, this is just obviously where my brain goes, right? Like, you diminish dumpsters and people are like, all right, great. But then there's going to be one guy that's like, can we diminish Chinese people? And you're like, okay, no. We can't diminish all races of people. But like, is there going to be a limit to what you're allowed to diminish?
Let's hope. That would be awful.
Of course. Like, no one wants to diminish people, but there's racist people out there that want people to be straight up diminished. So how would there be a limit to what you're allowed to diminish?
Yeah, let's hope that those would be some of the guardrails that people are like, I want to diminish my neighbors, or like just not have them
no
in
kids.
my line
We're
of,
diminishing kids.
Yeah.
And then how much of those things can you diminish, but like you still need them there? So like, no one wants to see a dumpster, but also no one wants to walk into a dumpster. Mm-hmm. So how would it be able to tell, okay, this thing is diminished, but also don't walk that way?
So maybe you get like an arrow as like object, or maybe it's just things that are kind of aerial and like in the sky. And so you're kind of just replacing a sign on a building as opposed to taking out things that somebody could like walk into. So maybe that becomes a safety issue with diminished reality, and like, okay, we can only do things that are above 8 feet because no one's going to like walk into them.
Right.
So the technology is still very much evolving, but it is very much a part of our future with these kind of augmented and virtual realities.
So in this augmented reality, I want to bring it back to the avatar convo we were having before. Are there avatars in that augmented reality as well?
So there's a few different ways we show up. So maybe you kind of build a digital version of yourself, and anyone who's wearing augmented glasses sees you as the digital version that you want them to see you in. So maybe, which could be insane, maybe we never take off filters, so to speak, because it's like, okay, anyone who's in these AR glasses that I'm wearing, they are going to see me as I've kind of face-tuned my face and done this and smoothed that out, and that's kind of how you look. Mm-hmm. Will we be more, I think avatars, but photorealistic. So when I say avatars of the future, I'm hoping that they're photorealistic, which most companies are working on, and that just means you look like you. I'm not cartoon Sinead, I'm just Sinead in augmented reality. But yeah, avatars in that form.
And you would be able to adjust things about you to a limit, or would you be able to adjust anything? And I guess this gets into like the red and gray flag area that we were talking about. And
it would also get into like the capabilities of the technology. So maybe it's easier to adjust or edit the clothes that somebody sees you in, but it's harder to do maybe smaller details, so to speak. Or maybe it is easier to have an augmented reality filter on your face that kind of makes it seem like you always have makeup on when that's not the case.
And is this like, is this where like digital clothing and like maybe the NFT space could come in? Mm-hmm. Where like you could purchase clothing that's very expensive but doesn't actually exist, but only exists through the digital interface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that that's actually going to be a big part of what NFTs become. Or at least kind of how we'll use that technology. If you buy something like a shirt and you have the digital version that you can apply to your AR glasses that people see you in, your receipt for that would probably be in NFT form, or like a stamp on the piece of clothing itself in the digital reality.
Right. I mean, that is wild. Mm-hmm. Just to try to imagine that reality where it's like, okay, I walk down the street, I'm seeing advertisements that aren't there. I'm checking, but they are there in this augmented thing. I'm checking an email that isn't there, but is in this augmented thing. And I'm seeing people wearing clothing that they're not actually wearing, with facial features that are a little exaggerated because they have some type of filter on that they don't actually possess. I wonder if it'll be like an insult to like take your glasses off in the future. Like
how dare you?
Like you see, like you're talking to someone, it's like, how dare you look at who I really am, look at who I'm presenting myself to be. Like it would be seen as a diss. Mm-hmm. Like you're at a bar talking to someone and you're like,
yeah.
Like, did you just peek at me in
see
real
the
life?
Real me?
Yeah. It's like, I only look at the me that I'm presenting because that's how we're interfacing. Now, I guess I'm curious, not everyone has a smartphone. Mm-hmm. Obviously, a lot of people do. The majority of people, maybe. But there are people, specifically a class of people, that it's difficult to have a smartphone. So in this new world where everything is predicated on augmented reality, having this glass, is it something that's issued? Is it just given to people? Is it a human right to be able to interface on this new world?
I think if you think about it as replacing the smartphone, devices don't always get the fundamental human rights status, even though I think that they should. I think if you don't have certain devices, you can't interface with the world and
really?
The economy. But things like the internet are like becoming a human right. But you're saying, like, would AR glasses be a human right?
If that's the way that everything is interfacing, if this is like approaching metaverse and the barrier to entry into the metaverse is $500 or something, not everyone is going to be able to enter the metaverse, and that's going to really restrict people. How do you see that getting legislated?
I mean, it's a problem right now.
What do you mean?
Not everybody has access to a smartphone or a computer, and therefore they don't have access to a lot of the economy, applying for jobs. A lot of that happens through like digital platforms, and so people are already kind of cut out. And so making technology economically inclusive, that's already a really important thing that we're not doing very well. And as it just becomes smarter and probably a bit more expensive, we totally risk locking people out of the future, which I think is like massive red flags and things that we need to be working on.
So in Sinead's perfect world, what do we do? Like with the glass situation, if everything's now interfacing through this augmented reality, how do we mitigate that?
Yeah, I think if that's something that citizens would need to participate in your society or your economy, that is something I think governments should definitely consider subsidizing in some ways, or even if that's encouraging innovation from companies so they can bring down price, get economies of scale, lower financial barriers to access, then I think that that's absolutely worth it. And that, for, like, the internet is, I think, an important example in this one, because when it first came out, it wasn't seen as something that everybody should have. Most people didn't even believe it would work. And now governments they do subsidize the internet, because they're like, if my citizens can't access the internet, they really can't participate in our economy, which is not great for all of us.
Interesting. Do you think